The civil rights movement heats up in 1960 and 61 with the sit-ins. It's really a turning point. But it's a turning point for a struggle that's been going on since at least the years after the Civil War. Who should vote? Should there be property qualifications? Should African Americans participate fully as citizens? Those struggles have been going on for a long time. And what happens in 1960-61 is students figure out a way that they, without waiting for the grown-ups, can make a difference. And in Greensboro, North Carolina, on February 1st, 1960, students from A&T University sit down at the lunch counters. Black folk are not supposed to eat at the lunch counters. That's for white people. And the college students, dressed in their Sunday best, sit down and politely ask for service. The South loves polite. The South runs on polite. And here are young African Americans out-politing the whites. And it takes a long time for it to succeed. In Greensboro, 6 months, spreads from a historically black college to a historically black college. In Charlotte, over 6 months. In Rock Hill, there wasn't a black four-year college, but there was the Friendship College, a two-year college, and students there began to mobilize in February of 1960, and nothing happened. People marched, people sat in, you'd get sit down at the lunch counter, you'd be hauled off to jail, you'd bail yourself out. There's only so much money to do that. Now it's 1961, a whole year. What do you do? And so Thomas Gaither, who was from Great Falls, South Carolina, a little bit older, just a few years older than the college students, worked as an organizer for CORE, the Congress on Racial Equality. Folks had been talking about going to jail and not getting bailed out, of staying there as a witness and an attraction for the national media, a way of dramatizing the story. And were the students in Rock Hill willing to do that? And yes, they were. And that's the Friendship Night. What happened in Greensboro in 1960 was not original. There had been people sitting in. What was original was this commitment to nonviolence, to Gandhi's Satyagraha, the soul force of using your rightness and your silent witness rather than any kind of violence. And so that was a tremendous energizer for the movement. And then just the fact that anybody could do it. As long as you were prepared not to strike back, which is hard, as long as you could make that preparation, you could become a civil rights activist. And so what happens in Rock Hill is carrying that movement, which had been going on for a year, to a new level by not only being arrested, but serving hard labor for 30 days on what they called the chain gang. You weren't actually chained together, but they made you do things like they would dump out a dump truck of sand and say, fill the dump truck, and then they dump it out again. It was just the point was to break your spirit. And these people went through it, and their spirit was not broken. And that was a powerful thing. And it became a magnet for people who wanted to organize a national movement. There was a new Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee organized out of Raleigh, people from all over the South. Students were willing to go help a local sit-in. This was really the first time that happened, was in Rock Hill. 4 members of SNCC went to Rock Hill and were jailed in sympathy with the original 9. Charles Jones from Charlotte was one of those. Diane Nash, who eventually helped organize the March on Selma, was one of those. And it got national publicity. Front pages of African American newspapers, written up in the New York Times, and it made a difference. Diane Nash did something that later resonated in the whole civil rights movement. She wrote a letter to the newspaper explaining what it was that these young people wanted. And a few years later, she was one of the people who got Dr. King to go to Birmingham and to be jailed and not get out on bail. And he wrote a letter from the Birmingham jail. So there are many ways that this Rock Hill effort re-energized the sit-in movement that was already going on and showed that mass action, not merely local action, but mass action could change things. Students were really important activists, and that's why the sit-in movement was so powerful. Adults have mortgages, they have car payments, they have a boss that they can't anger. And students are a little bit insulated from that. And so students becoming activists, that was a breakthrough thing. For the students in the Friendship Nine, it was not without risk. Willie McLeod, poor farm kid, come to the big city to earn his education. His family owned their own land, but I don't think they could have, bucked the white power structure too much, and yet he did. Tremendous courage for young people who had maybe a little bit more breathing space than the adults, but the repercussions were going to reflect on their families as well. The sit-in movement is a really powerful moment in making visible the democratic process of America. We are a democratic nation in which the people can speak, the people can overturn the powerful if that is indeed the right thing. And doing that through the political process works sometimes. You have to realize this is before the 1965 Voting Rights Act. It was still very difficult for African Americans to cast a ballot. And so is there another way? And what these folks did was to show to all of us that there was a way that was not the barrel of a gun. There was a way to use nonviolence to bring about social change. And it is something that resonates in the freeing of South Africans from apartheid. It's something that you saw in Tiananmen Square in China a few years ago. It's something that both the Tea Party movement and the Occupy Wall Street movement have harked back to. It is this promise, and we as Americans, we the people, can make a difference.